work it. All right, are we live? I know I said I was going to go live at 6 o'clock today. An hour early, but I have this video that I watched while cleaning my apartment, or would listen to while I was cleaning my apartment today. And I thought it was quite interesting. Now, I don't want to get into becoming like this excuse channel, which it kind of has done in the past. I don't want to get into the trajectory of my channel has gotten kind of strange, and I've also been getting a lot of spam comments. So if you're seeing them, know that that has nothing to do with me. I'm trying to delete them as much as possible. They're about some book. I don't know if it's even real. A couple other things, but I wanted to show this video. It's about vitamin D and vitamin B. And Cole, I reached out to Cole today because yet again yesterday, I went for a long walk. And you guys know that if you watch my live, it was not a terribly long walk. It was like between 2.5 and 3 miles. But it was very warm out. And I was sweating pretty good. And I got back and I had put salt in a little bit of lemonade, and I drank that down. And I thought maybe that was going to aid in my sleep, but it didn't. And once again, I did not sleep for like 2 or 3, I think 2 hours. And I got up, I had a little bit of sugar. That didn't work. I got up and I had a little bit of salt. I guess that worked because I fell asleep. I cannot figure out what is causing this. So then I went back and I have kind of like a light journal, not like an extensive journal like I used to have when I was weightlifting, of just kind of my workouts. I don't even really journal my walking, but it is just readily available on my phone, so I can kind of go back and track that. But I do write down a lot of my sleep stuff. And I've noticed a pattern that anytime that I work out, I'm not sleeping. It's driving me crazy. And when I finally do sleep, it's not the greatest sleep that you could have. And so this video pops up on my, I don't know what you call it on YouTube, like your feed page. I have no idea what you call it. And I thought it was somewhat interesting. Now, I know these two pushed like keto real hard, but this video was 7 years ago, so I don't know. Maybe that's changed. So let's listen to it a little bit, if I can get it to work.
If you sleep better, the brain appears to remember all the deferred repairs. Patients who had lupus, who had been sick for 20 years, ended up needing bigger doses of Bs than I did. I wasn't very sick. I needed slightly more. It's almost as though when the brain says, you know, I'm doing so well, I'd like to do 3.5 hours of REM, it appears to remember. That means there's a concept in the background, which is there must be stages of sleep where you can actually repair the body and remake things that have been injured. But you must get into this very specific phase for all the pieces to be in place to do that. That means we are.
The only real reason that I am doing this video is because a lot of the stuff that she talks about, I went through when I was a child. And I think it's just kind of interesting.
Are completely self-healing, and that we have the opportunity to reverse really terrible things, but you do that by sleeping the right amount. In some people, they ended up in the year 1, year and a half after correcting their intestinal bacteria, they ended up needing more Bs. And
vitamin B is what she's talking about. I'm not sure why she can't specify that, but she doesn't.
Only if they're sleeping better. So if they're sleeping better, my theory was they were actually making more repairs. They therefore needed slightly more Bs. They needed more than what these guys make naturally. If these guys only make the basal amount that we need, and you need more, because I'm encouraging your brain to sleep even better by keeping the D perfect, you might need slightly more.
And again, every time I play or make a video like this, I get so many comments about different things. I'm just putting this out there. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Like I I don't know what to tell everybody. Like, I found it interesting. Maybe it has no relevance on life at all, but here we are. Yeah, I don't love the fact that this guy's like pushing supplements and shit, but I don't even know who he is.
Sleeping the right amount. And some people, they ended up in the...
What in the hell just happened there?
Thanks for tuning in. I'm very excited here to be with Dr. Stasha Gominak, and we're going to talk all about sleep, vitamin D, the microbiome, and much more. But before we dive into it, I'm going to put some really awesome links to where you can download some of the articles that we're going to talk about. And I want to thank a mutual friend of ours. So without Dr. Mark Brahenna, so thanks Dr. Mark for introducing us and all the research that he's done in sleep disordered breathing and mouth taping. We're going to talk about that on the podcast. And also, incidentally, I think this is a great launching place. My mentor, Gerard Guillory, a physician in Denver, Colorado, always told me, anecdotally, he actually studied out in Boston a little bit as well, and under Dr. Hollick and so forth, and got inspired about the vitamin D that way. But he noticed that his patients that would take vitamin D at night, they got deeper sleep. And so when we started talking on the phone about this connection between vitamin D, sleep, the microbiome, repair, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like what I've been hearing anecdotally from Dr. Guillory for a while. So let's kind of launch with how you got into this. First, maybe scaling back and talk a little bit about your practice as a neurologist and looking at sleep disordered breathing and things of that sort.
Most of my patients who I was sending for sleep studies were young, healthy females. Totally different group than what we were told to look for. And that group didn't have sleep apnea. They just didn't have any REM. And since we don't have any drugs, and I couldn't give them CPAP devices, I'm stuck with now hundreds of little kids, teenagers, young healthy females with no REM. And then by accident, I have a patient who's got a full night's 10 hours of sleep. So she's sleeping. So I can't give her a sleeping pill. She has a low B12, a very low B12. And so because I've been spending all this time thinking, they're not stopping breathing. They just don't have REM. How could that happen? So I'm spending all this time with this part of the brainstem that runs that and reading all these articles about how the cells run REM sleep. How do we get into REM? How do we come out of REM? What do we know about that? And nobody's saying anything about it. Nobody's even reporting that on the front page.
I don't know if anybody's had a sleep study done. It is not fun. Especially seeing how where I used to have it done, it was not done on the top floor right underneath the helipad. So every time a helicopter came in, the helicopter was basically landing on your face. I'm like, why would you put this here?
The report. It's hidden in the report. And I don't even know it until later when my pulmonologist tells me. And all of a sudden I do B12s, and then somebody says my vitamin D, and I throw that in there because I'm doing blood already. Then everybody has low vitamin D, and there are vitamin D receptors in these cells that I've been reading about for 3 years. So it's not like I went looking for a connection. I went looking for, why are these cells malfunctioning in all these healthy people? Little kids. Why would little kids not have any REM? Why? So I'm puzzling for years over why these cells are malfunctioning the way they are. Why they're doing it in such a huge population. If you count not only the sleep apnea, you count everybody who has interrupted sleep, who can't get out of bed, who has pain on awakening, that's 3/4 of the population. It's horrifying. That means whatever it is that's happening is happening throughout the huge population and in a specific time frame. Because I was alive before this happened, and I went to medical school before sleep apnea, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, we never learned about those diagnoses. We all thought they were bullshit. We thought they were made up.
So sleep apnea back in the 70s and 60s?
Didn't exist.
Oh, wow.
See, because you're younger, you don't have that framework. Sure. It did not exist. It was there.
It's amazing how many things have come around since the 70s.
But it wasn't an epidemic. There were populations where you could describe that, and they actually had old paintings that they used when they first began to talk about sleep apnea. These big fat guys who were stopping breathing while sitting in a chair, upright sleeping, were the icon that they used to describe it. So those people existed. All the diseases that we see now, when if you look back, Dickens' descriptions of the poor that worked in brick factories. So back in the early 1800s is the very first time that entire population moves into living and working indoors for their entire life. That's when big non-healing ulcers, rickets, heart failure, diabetes, renal failure, all begin to be described. So all the diseases that we now see in epidemic were really described in the early 1800s when a group that was raising sheep, standing outside, a pastoral life, had a house, went there only at night, moved into factories for the very first time. So all of those diseases are now epidemic. And thinking of it that way means that you take out the dietary exercise to some extent, not all, but the diet that was a pastoral life 200 years ago, you look at that and go, is that a lot different now? You know, so the two major, and all the features that you've talked about, daily exercise is absolutely a big player, but it turns out that if the Maasai can live only on milk and blood.
That is so disgusting. I when I first heard that, I'm like, what? It's just, ugh.
Of their cattle? That's a really interesting thing. So there are certain diets around the globe that are very narrowed. They won't be able to live on blood alone or on milk alone, but they can live on that combination and thrive as long as they live outdoors. So that tribe has still kept.
Aren't they considered like the most angry people on the planet?
Tiny little huts. They have not moved indoors.
So the brain stem is a critical factor, shall we say, in the function of deep restorative sleep.
Yes, it is the switch. So it doesn't do all the details that happen above, but there is a basic on-off switch, and that on-off switch paralyzes us. So there's two things that happen. One, you have to get paralyzed correctly to fix everything. And two, you have to be able to switch into and out of these different phases. So there is a little group of nuclei that are in the brainstem, and they have vitamin D receptors. I thought that was really amazing when I ran into it. And then I thought, everybody's vitamin D is low. No one thinks of D as having anything to do with the brain. But it turns out there are articles from the 1980s, for instance, that show that if you give vitamin D to those particular cells, the vitamin D goes into the nucleus and expresses the enzyme that makes a particular neurotransmitter. It doesn't make all of them. It makes acetylcholine. Acetylcholine, oddly enough, is what makes us get paralyzed correctly in sleep. So once looking at all of that, vitamin D turned out to be a major player. It's not the only player. And ultimately, all of this stuff works with the neurotransmitters. That means you kind of have to understand that every single person who becomes deficient has a different mix of which neurotransmitters aren't right. If you look at it that way, that means they can present in all kinds of different flavors. They'll have other effects as well as to why they don't make acetylcholine or why they don't make this other neurotransmitter. Therefore, they'll be somebody who has insomnia, or someone who wakes frequently, or somebody who, can't sleep until the day. So,
I didn't even hear her say that the first time. That has been a massive issue with me up until this last, I don't know, three or 4 weeks.
So instead of looking at it as a list, you think of it as, these all have the same root cause, but are manifesting in different ways. That's what changed the way I looked at the sleep disorders.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. But I think some people will get confused when you say the brainstem induces paralyzation in the body temporarily, because they're like, wait, paralyzed while you're asleep? What is that? And then how does that then tie into sleep disordered breathing? And our mutual friend, Dr. Mark Brahenna, who, thank you, Dr. Mark, introduced us, so we're here. Let's talk about that, and then placement of the tongue, and then how that can have this feed-forward cycle on this whole sleep disordered breathing and sleep apnea, etc.
The first thing to think about is that our sleep is the same as the sleep of the dinosaurs. This part of the brain is exactly the same in the dinosaurs. That means
How did they study this?
It's engineered so beautifully, and it's had so many chances to be changed, yet it stays the same. The idea that we have to get paralyzed while we're sleeping is bizarre. If you don't swallow your own spit, you drown. If you stop breathing, you die. So this part of the brain is already set up to notice when you stop breathing. Patients who stop breathing, it's not their wife or the technician who runs in during the sleep study that wakes them, their brain wakes them. That means the design of getting paralyzed already thought about the option of, what if he stopped breathing? Oh, we have to pay attention to that. It wakes you to light sleep and then you're not paralyzed. We really don't know why you have to get paralyzed. I've thought about that for 10 years now, and I made up an explanation, which was, well, you can't fix a pump when it's pumping. You turn it off and you open it up and then you fix things inside it. So my theory is that you must get paralyzed. Every moving part must get paralyzed in order to fix tendons, muscles, arteries. Anything that's being used every day gets used up, and then you have to repair it every night. And in order to get to a place where you can fix it, you have to paralyze it. I don't think the brain or the liver get paralyzed. They're not moving. But the parts that are moving, you have to paralyze them. This little nucleus I was telling you about is broken into 3 different groups. One that does this part, that really governs face, nose, throat, a large area, diaphragm, chest wall, and all the other ones. So those cells are actually split out. So there's a little wire that goes from this particular cell in the brainstem that paralyzes your toe and paralyzes your calf, paralyzes your thigh. And it turns out that they're grouped probably functionally. So what we see on those sleep studies is periodic limb movements. That means they're walking movements. They're periodic because they walk. That means that most of the time, the people who have pain when they wake have knee pain or hip pain or toe pain or ankle pain, and they will be manifesting pain in the part that didn't stop moving last night. So it never got repaired. And the reason why we say, I have a bad knee, is because that high school injury 30 years ago shows up when the weather changes, when I don't sleep well, if I'm doing too much, and I cheat. What you're really doing is cheating a repair. That piece that was injured in your body actually needs more repair every night. So that's the one part of your body where you know, oh, I'll start to have pain there. There's an actual mechanism for that to happen. So what happened to me was I saw these patients come back when I was treating their headaches with a CPAP device and say, you know what, my back pain's gone. And I would go, whoa, that's so weird. We're blowing air up in the head.
All right, some of the comments here. So, supposedly, our brain is reptilian, that part of the brain. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm not a dinosaur baker, yeah. She suggests gender confusion is due to lack of proper sleep and etc. Yeah, I could see that. The Messiah, she talks about it in this video. The Messiah are the guys, I know who they are, I just, from what I've heard, they are pretty violent. To get good value from K2, looking at trans K2. Yep. That's in K2 that I take.
So I was still thinking, oxygen, brain, why would their back get better? And then I really started thinking about it differently. I would go, oh, did she have any leg movements? Because I really had a very limited palette to choose from. I had these machines, I had sleeping pills, and I had medicines that I thought affected our leg movements during sleep. So I would
Not sure dinosaurs existed. Yeah, I could hear that.
throw these medicines in there, and they wouldn't usually work. And then I would be stuck with, this gal's knees didn't get better. Why is it usually below the waist? Why are these movements usually of the legs? And
Giant humans did, though. Yeah, I mean, what do you think Himalayan salt is?
I would actually look into the neurochemistry of that. And it turns out there are these walking centers that are in the same location. They're very, very primitive walking centers that may actually be not repressed correctly during sleep. So that there may be a specific reason why the leg movements are what were there at the end. The second piece was, why would an 8-year-old have more than one sleep disorder? Why would they stop breathing and why would they move their legs? What if these guys paralyze us? That means they have to be able to bring us back. They have to be able to turn the muscles on again. They have a little wire that turns the muscle on. That means if they're kind of shaking back and forth and they're not doing cruise control, exactly paralyzed, they're going a little not paralyzed enough, they're going a little bit too paralyzed, you could actually form both problems. If you get too paralyzed, your limbs don't lose, but your airway does. Mm-hmm. This part then becomes too paralyzed, the airway is no longer open, and that kid who I'm looking in their throat, looking for tonsils, and there aren't any, can still have apnea because this becomes too paralyzed only in deep sleep. But as soon as we take away his deep sleep, he doesn't grow, he doesn't develop his brain, he doesn't sexually develop, he doesn't make the neurotransmitters that make him able to pay attention during the day. So the effect of that one stealing of being able to get paralyzed correctly has a huge downstream effect on all of the things that happen to that child afterwards. So this idea that it could be one place affecting both, and I'm thinking that for 2 or 3 years, and I'm making up these stories so I can tell my patients why it's important to them. So I can manipulate it with drugs, but there aren't any drugs that give back REM. That means once I stumble into the fact that these particular receptors that I'm reading a lot about the basic science have vitamin D receptors, I thought, wow, I didn't use sunscreen in medical school. We didn't have air conditioning in common use. When I was growing up, I played outside. As soon as the air conditioning comes, this puts it right at the middle to late 1970s to 1980s. And as I get out of medical school, right at that time,
that's when things really started to shift. And I was alive for that part of the time, like 1980s on. We've definitely seen a huge shift in health since then.
We start to get reports about sleep apnea, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. That's the very beginning in the early 80s. So there's a timeline where both of those are starting to appear. And then I think, what about irritable bowel? We didn't learn about that in medical school. It didn't exist. Celiac disease did not exist as an epidemic when I was in medical school. We learned about it, but it was rare.
What about MS? Because I know that's another disease correlated with vitamin D as well. Interesting.
MS is a vitamin D deficiency disorder. However, there's a very important piece of what we're going to talk about next, which is once you replace vitamin D, the body changes slowly from a vitamin D deficient body to a B deficient body. So the vitamin D is a major player in MS, and that was the very first neurologic illness where vitamin D was described. But what I saw was that as you get the vitamin D perfect and their sleep gets better, 2 years later, their sleep goes bad again, and they start to have burning in their feet, gait disorder, they urinate on themselves. They have specific things that start to show up in the second and third year that we would have told them, in fact, we have told them is MS. It's not. It's a B vitamin deficiency state. That means the second piece, which is D runs the microbiome, and it was attached to the microbiome, or we survived better if it was attached to the microbiome, because what you've taught everybody with all of the podcasts is who lives in your gut determines where you put the calories you eat. Yeah. So you can be the wrong microbiome, eat 1,000 calories a day, and still gain weight. That was a huge survival advantage. In any species that can actually go through 6 months of no food, they can put on fat before, they can lie in the ground for 6 months, they can hibernate, they run the thyroid hormone down so the metabolism throughout the whole body is reduced. Mysteriously, they're able to run their body for 6 months in the ground. That means they don't eat. If the B vitamins are all water soluble and we pee them out every day, which is not completely true, that has to mean there was a source, because every single thing we do in every cell is linked to the B vitamins. There's already a literature that suggests that the microbiome in the bear eats the colonic mucus that the bear creates. That small colony.
There's just some of the stuff the body does is so gross. Where is she going with this? Well, you got to watch the video to find out.
Makes all the B vitamins that allows the bear to have all the metabolic needs matched for the 6 months it's in the ground. So that system meant, is it possible that the B vitamins are actually playing a role here? What happened to my...
I don't think I'm going to watch this whole video on here. The name of the video is Vitamin D, Deep Sleep, and Gut Bacteria with Dr. Stasha Gominak, if you want to look it up.
Patients was, as I got them to sleep better, I don't want them to be unconscious. That's not why we're doing this. I want them to make repairs. Those repairs are the things that make us feel better. So physical repairs mean we don't have pain. Mental repairs mean we don't have headaches and we can think normally. All of those repairs are linked to the B vitamins. At the end of the second year, my patients started to deteriorate again. Their sleep went bad, the headaches came back, the pain came back. And in fact, 3 things importantly were still there after really good management of the D. Pain was terrible and was increasing of many kinds, arthritic, muscle pain, back pain. Their IBS was no better, and I was really depressed by that because I was still taking...
Now, my one issue with this video is I think she thinks that a normal vitamin D level is like, I don't know, 60 or 70, which I think is way too low still. I might stop watching this pretty soon, but some of this stuff is interesting, some of it's not. Most people just want the calories in, calories out version of life, and they think that that's normal. 1973, cell phones were used by the few. 1980s were mainstream. They weren't that mainstream. I mean, they really weren't mainstream until the late 90s. I mean, most of them were attached to a car or something like that.
Probiotics, and they're all still taking probiotics, and we're trading stories about probiotics. And the third was that they didn't lose weight. They were exercising more because they felt better. They were clearly very inspired by the fact that they slept better, but they didn't lose weight. Then I had a couple of patients who also had really scary things that I couldn't explain. 2 young women with burning in their hands and feet that occurred within about a month of each other, and they didn't have anything else in common except they were both taking my vitamin D. One of my patients brought me a book about a B vitamin called pantothenic acid, and even though I'm not very knowledgeable in vitamins, I eventually read that book. And then the references for that book describe that pantothenic acid is pivotal in sleep. So that's why she brought it to me. So B12, I'm already supplementing. We know that B12 plays a big role in sleep. There's good literature about that. So I'm already treating the 2 gals with the burning. They were on B12. They had good B12 levels. So there was something else showing up. And this burning in the hands and feet is a very peculiar neuropathy. And neuropathy is my subspecialty. So that's something that I...
Of course, the cell towers were activated, but they weren't. I mean, there's like 150,000 of them right now. How many were around in the 1980s? I mean, 10,000 maybe. I mean, you certainly weren't getting cell towers out in most of the suburbs. You certainly weren't getting cell towers out in like the rural areas.
I've been practicing for 30 years. That did not walk in the door commonly. We see it all the time now, and we say...
And they were, what, 1G in the beginning? Now they're 5G. I mean, it's completely changed. You know, it's completely gotten just out of hand.
It's diabetes, but it's not. These women did not have diabetes, especially burning in the hands. That's a very unusual thing. The articles about pantothenic acid back in the 50s, where they took pantothenic acid out of the diet, showed within 2 weeks they developed burning in the hands and feet. Gait disorder, couldn't sleep, burning in the hands and feet, and belly discomfort. So all of a sudden I think, wow, could this be what's happening to them? And then the next question is, they haven't changed their diet. Why have they changed to a B deficient person? And why did it take 2 years? That's very different than what we've been taught about the B vitamins. Not knowing what else to do, I gave back large doses of B complex, and the burning went away in 2 days. Wow. The pain went away in 2 days. Now, there's one other really important thing that happened. The book is referenced as a layperson treating other people with rheumatoid arthritis, trying to teach them. This is way back in the 90s when we're just beginning to use vitamins and nutrition, or it's not as common that people are seeking that. They described that the dose for pantothenic acid was 400 milligrams. So I took 400 milligrams. I gave my patients a recommendation of 400 milligrams. But I also remembered that when you give one B vitamin, you should give all of them. I didn't know anything about them.
Will she get to the point about vitamin? I mean, that's the point of the video. It's an hour and something. I don't know what to tell you. That this is how videos work. This is how things work.
So I gave out the recommendation to take B100 and 400 milligrams of pantothenic acid. Within about a week, many of the patients came back and said that they were agitated and couldn't sleep at all. So they stopped the 400 milligrams and they took B100. And when they did that, they felt great. That means there's a dose response, which is very.
All right, I'm going to be done with this. I just wanted to give information out there of this stuff, but I realize that 90% of the people who watch my channel, all they want is to talk about calories in, calories out. Nothing else seems to matter to anybody. Health doesn't play a role in any factor whatsoever. And it's just insane to me. I mean, nobody can explain to me or anybody else or themselves why eating a lot of calories back in the day didn't seem to add into what? That's why raw milk is such a powerful or a power food. I'm not getting into the whole. I don't buy into that. I mean, the whole idea of drinking another animal's milk to me is just very strange. It's just very strange. I don't know when it started, why it started, how it kept on going. I mean, of all things that we have to eat, just other animals' milk just does not resonate with, especially seeing how I used to buy raw, like goat milk and stuff like that. And the month that I stopped having milk, I dropped like 50 pounds in that month. So I'm just never really on the milk bandwagon. Anyway, if you know, again, the name of the video is Vitamin D, Deep Sleep and Gut Bacteria with Dr. Stasha Gominak. If you want to go watch the rest of this, it's the bacteria and enzymes. Maybe. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the fact that milk is allowed to have 250,000 cells of pus per cc of fluid. I mean, that's meant to build a very large animal's, system up. Can't even think of an immune system up, not ours. It's just the whole thing with the milk is just very strange to me. It's just so unnatural as far as I mean, we have, like, if we needed milk to survive, then we would probably just be breastfed our entire life somehow, but we're not. So I'm the milk. I don't know. I'm not really into milk. Like, if people want to eat meat and shit like that, whatever. But milk, I'm not a big fan of. Anyway, I thought this was kind of interesting. I wanted to get a little bit of this out there. She does go on to talk about how if when you're growing up you don't have like B and D vitamins in ratios that you need them, that your teeth won't develop correctly, like you'll grow in crooked, your mouth won't be wide enough, you won't get a good enough sleep, so your body won't develop 100% to like so sexually you probably might not develop all that well, but the other two, a couple other things will develop fine. And like the Messiah skinny is fucking and live on milk and blood. I mean, I know cigarette smokers that are skinny, and like, I don't care. Like, you can smoke cigarettes and get yourself skinny. It doesn't mean it's like a good idea. I mean, and they're known for being very violent. So if that's your thing, then go do it. But it's still not my thing. I mean, they live on milk and blood. I mean, if that's your way of wanting to live, then go to Africa and try to join the Maasai. But anyways, I see the point of this video is not getting anywhere. So I'm going to go, I think. Anyways, yeah, I think that's going to be it. But if to any of those who are actually interested in anything that was said in this video, hopefully it helped you. To those not so much, then I guess I'll see you in the